back trouble, heart troubles, but the mouth is in fine fettle. What is the subject? The subject is succession. Well, let's be as brief as we can and begin with the general question of what is art. I personally think that if you want to get at art, here's a good guideline. If it makes you laugh or if it makes you cry, you're on the right track. If it makes you laugh and it makes you cry and it makes you think, then you're probably looking at art. So, for example, every time I've seen Ed Wood by Tim Burton and the curtain, the credits are rolling, I'm laughing with tears streaming down my face, and the ironies are piling up. Well, Tim Burton, for all of his faults, and he has many, or profound ones, he has a touch of the poet and a touch of the genius about him. Now, let's look at something like Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad is an example of what I call wanker cinema. Wanker cinema is movies and TV made by people who grew up watching other movies and TV. For example, the classic example would be Quentin Tarantino, who spent his formative years in a video store looking at videos, preferably trashy ones. And instead of knowing something about life, for example, how to pitch a tent, how to set a fly, how to hunt, how to climb, how to fix a car, how to make love to a woman, he was just watching the television screen, watching a VCR of a movie, and learning from that. As a result, his movies, which are full of a certain energy and imagination, are all based on his experience of watching things, not his life experience. So I don't laugh, I don't cry, and I don't think. But there are lots of cultural references, and some people find it to be very, very interesting and indicative. And that brings us to our next point. If a work is emblematic of the age, it can be art. But if it's symptomatic of the age, then it ain't. For example, when Madonna was in her heyday, I often thought, she's a lot like Reagan. We're living in the age of Reagan, and Madonna is a lot like Reagan. You know, Reagan was the false thing, or as what Gore Vidal called the acting president. He was a phony. He was an actor. He charmed people. People thought he was a nice guy. He wasn't a nice guy. He was actually a lonely, withdrawn man whose policies were as cruel as Thatcher's and have led to this age of mindless greed and anarchy, or nihilism. Well, Madonna is a lot like Reagan that way. Her style was extraordinary, but she had nothing to say and she didn't have any talent. So again, you're not laughing, you're not crying, you're not thinking. The videos, I have to admit, were brilliant. But she can't sing, and everything is, they're just faking it. So to get back to Breaking Bad is wanker cinema. It's all guys who grew up, went to good schools, spent their summer, I don't know, maybe cleaning the pool, drinking, smoking dope, playing pool, whatever it is they were doing, they weren't living, because Breaking Bad doesn't show anything about living, about what it's like to live a life. Everything about it is fake. And there aren't even dramatic verities in it. For example, this ridiculous, son subplot where he's adopted this obnoxious, screaming, blathering idiot. What's his name? I forget his name. Walter White sort of adopts this fellow. You have to help me here. Who's always saying bitch. But he has a perfectly nice son who somehow never becomes an important character. But when it comes to criminals, the whole thing is pure fake, based again on movies and television shows and perhaps Quentin Tarantino movies on top of it. So when we get to Succession, we're not looking at wanker cinema, but we're looking at cinema of the intelligentsia, the dry, empty American post-Reagan intelligentsia. So these are the people who loved The Sopranos. These are the people who loved, oh, I don't know, maybe West Wing. Now we get to Succession. Do you laugh? Never. Maybe a couple of clever lines make you smile. There's definitely cleverness there, especially in Roman and in Tom. But you don't laugh, belly laugh from life experience. You giggle at the smarmy cleverness as you would in some riposte in Dangerous Liaisons. But Dangerous Liaisons, I should mention, is full of life and full of moving scenes and interesting stuff. So I don't mean to in any way bring that near this. In Succession, you never laugh, even though it's considered to be funny. You never cry, even though it's supposed to have tragic arcs. It makes no sense, and it's not thought-provoking. As a matter of fact, you're asking yourself, the one thought you have is, why am I watching this nonsense? These people have no abilities that we can see. There's no business going on. So it's the anti-Balzac. It's a TV show which no one seems to do anything. But whereas in a play by Chekhov, they're doing nothing because that is the point of their lives, that they wake up and they see to the garden and they have breakfast and they talk about the past, they talk about plans, and they carry on with each other in a meaningless future of the decadence of the elites, the upper middle class elites in late Tsarist Russia. Here, we don't learn anything about what business it is that Logan Roy is in. And by the way, he is treated rather sympathetically. In fact, they all are. And there's very short shrift about, the absolute vicious, vile evil that's wrought upon the world by these people. But we don't see them doing anything. They do no evil. They don't do any work. We don't see them collecting a check. As a matter of fact, they don't even seem to know how to fry an egg. And I'm not even sure they know how to knead an egg. Did we actually see them sitting down and eating a meal? Whenever there's a meeting with a meal, the meeting breaks up after 3 minutes. And there are either, in the case with Adrian Brody, a scene in which there are, steamed lobsters left on the table, or there's another meeting where there's fine food on the table and no one seems to be hungry. So there's no eating, there's no sex, there's no true emotional arguments, there's no talking about business in any real way. They're all vying for position to do what? We're not sure what they do. We're not sure they're capable of doing anything. We don't even know if they have college degrees. And yet the sympathy for them is such that Siobhan sleeps with a fellow who is treated contemptuously, and we're supposed to share that contempt for him. Because when she asks him where he gets his news, he says, from the funny people. And she immediately cuts off with him as if he's not worth talking to. But we never see her reading the New York Review of Books. We don't see her reading the New York Times or the Guardian or the Nation or the Atlantic. We don't see anybody reading the news. We don't have any sense that they know anything about the news either. So Succession is another, pure bullshit kind of a show for the bullshit intelligentsia in a vapid, nihilistic America, in which, the separation by separation of status by money is quickly setting like concrete. And it won't be long, maybe 50 years, when we're already in pre-revolutionary France. And these people just want to be on the right side of the line. But beyond that, as we go back to Balzac, did we learn in 4 years anything about what it takes to actually manage a media conglomerate? What it takes to manage a television network or a television station, or even how to read a teleprompter? No. So it's a waste of time. I watched it just because everyone else was watching it, and I don't like to be left behind. Boo hoo.